Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm writing to Superbrain, Epigenetics, and more. Bernard Carl, Christoph Kuch, Rudy Tanzi, Deepak Chopra, and Sadhguru. Deepak, I think I remember that, but that last name, Chopra. Anyways, this looks interesting enough. Superbrain, Epigenetics, and Consciousness. So let's go with this video shot.
Right now, depression and mental illness is actually the #1 pandemic.
You're misunderstanding the psychological content and drama of your mind as a reality.
We have to make measurable what's not measurable. If it can't be measured, we don't study it as scientists.
Can you change the complexion of the person that you are today? 100%.
You are more than your brain, you're more than your genes.
Rudy, you've written the books Super Brain and Super Genes. What is interesting to me is when you say super genes, are there people, for example, I want to experience this consciousness, I want to experience this reality. Is there a predisposition to that? Am I born with those super genes to experience this?
When Deepak and I wrote Super Brain, Super Genes, and the third book in the trilogy was The Healing Self, the idea was that to tell people you are more than your brain, you're more than your genes. That with regard to genes, it's kind of like clay. Your parents are giving you the clay, but you get to sculpt it. But basically, your lifestyle is not only changing the wiring of your brain every day through neuroplasticity, but through repetition and new habits. And where that wiring becomes more solidified, you're also changing gene expression. So if you're eating junk food every day, your genes are responding to the inflammation that causes, and you feel sick. Whereas if you spend at least 2 months reshaping your diet, changing your neuroplasticity, changing your gene expression, as we wrote in the book, you can go on autopilot. Now your gene expression has changed in patterns that help you to now live a healthier life.
Dr. Chopra, you were a co-author of this book. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think both
Lift it up a little.
both neuroplasticity and epigenetics actually show the primacy of consciousness in modulating our biological activity. And this is very relevant right now, given what's happening in the world, because I see one of the topics here is social impact. So now, as we look at the world and look at the trauma that's happening, it's kind of reminiscent of what happened in the Second World War. There's evidence that people in the Holocaust, for example, who suffered starvation in the Netherlands, their descendants now have diabetes and metabolic syndrome. So the sequence seems to be separate mind, fear, anger, which is the memory of trauma, and fear creates trauma, all kinds of trauma. Fear, anger, memory of trauma, hostility, which is desire for vengeance. If you have a conscience, then some guilt and shame that goes with it. And the totality of that, which is called depression. And right now, depression and mental illness is actually the #1 pandemic, no matter what anyone says. And it's epigenetically recycling the trauma, which will go on for generations.
So Sadhguru, the question to you is, how do we, how much time it will take for us to distance ourselves or change this epigenetics or the gene expressions and consciously make our own?
Real quick with this discussion about it's really sad that mental illness is a factor here, and it's just so weird to me. I said this before that I think, and Sadhguru has said this, said the idea behind it. The idea behind it's the fact. Let me give the idea. The idea behind it is the fact that when we were younger people, we worried about hunger, we worried about water, we worried about food, shelter and survival. Essentially, that's all three broke down in survival and protection, obviously from the elements, or shelter, or animals, shelter and weapons, I guess. So those are the three major issues. You got to make sure you eat, got to make sure you drink clean water, you got to have shelter, and in a sense protection from, well, obviously the elements with the shelter, and weapons with animals or anything that would attack us or other human beings. Those were the major concerns. Now, again, outside of the protection part, the other three are taken care of mostly. Not all over the world, but majority of people who have mental issues have these three things taken care of. They have no issues with food, they have no issues with water, and they have no issues with shelter. Now you could say some of them are struggling with, making enough money, but they're eating, drinking, and have shelter. And some of them may be struggling with money because they're bad at keeping track of their spending habits. So they're still eating, they're still drinking, they still have shelter, but they're buying a whole bunch of stuff they don't need. And it's the sad truth, it's the fact that these three things that you need to survive, even some people have the fourth one, protection, whether they do it themselves or whether they have police or internal, I don't know, city police as in like people, they say, hey, you're on guard tonight or whatever, like little villages or whatever that have guards that protect them from external threats or perhaps even internal threats. So, not villages, but but you get what I'm saying, police generally speaking. So, again, they have essentially these three, if not four things provided for them where they no longer have to worry about for the most part, and yet these people are struggling mentally. It's really, really weird to think that the three things that you need to live are taken care of and now you're struggling. I guess you could make maybe make the argument that it's a different kind of struggle. Absolutely, yeah. You not dying tomorrow because you didn't eat right, you didn't drink right, you didn't have shelter, is it's just really weird, Anyways, let me close this out. So, again, the three major problems in the world: food, water, and shelter. Once taken care of, we don't have to worry about it. It's no longer in the back of our head saying, what am I going to eat tomorrow? What am I going to drink tomorrow? We're going to find shelter tomorrow. And we have problems. And the idea, as Sadhguru said, sorry, I forgot to say this, is the fact that animal, hungry, one problem. No hungry, 0 problems. For us, hungry, 1 problem. No hungry, 99 problems. I remember saying that, and it's absolutely true.
Is it possible? How long does it take? How quickly can it happen? And what should we do?
Okay.
Namaskaram. Good morning to everyone. Well, I must warn you that first and foremost, I do not ascribe to any particular philosophy, ideology or belief system. Essentially, I'm without identities within myself. And I'm also very carefully kept myself uneducated and pretty much uncivilized. Why I'm saying this is, hugely qualified people are here with enormous experience and science behind them. So what I may say may look completely off at some times, but as you know, science is going step by step towards a certain reality. Now I see it is pointing in the right direction. But the question is, if I point you towards something, do you have the eyes to see it? That's a question. When I say, do you have the eyes to see, right now I'm taking this literally. These two eyes are qualified to see only those things which stop light. You can see my hand because it stops light. My hand is not so vital for your existence, but the air that you breathe is very vital, but you cannot see it. This is the nature of our sense perception It is not that everything that's vital to us we are seeing. We are only seeing whatever is objects which stops light and reflects light, that's all we can see. That goes for all sense organs because they're contextual, because essentially they're survival instruments which we are trying to use as instruments to know. Sense organs, the more you sharpen them, they'll help you to survive better. And as I already warned you, what you call as my brain is full of information coming from sense perception. What you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you touch. To what extent means, if you walk from there to here, there could be, let's say, 25 different kinds of smells. You don't notice it consciously, but all of it is recorded. Only if something becomes very acute, you notice it. But if you bring a dog here, he smells all the 25 and more. So, though our neurological system is far more evolved than that of a dog, somehow he can smell more because we are clouded by our own cerebral activity, too much thinking going on non-stop. You know, in the Indian jungles, I have been for weeks on end by myself. If you meet the tribal guy, I'm also like this. If we just walk in, I'll tell you which animal is in which direction, even if it's a kilometer away, just the smell. Most of the city folk, this is some… I'm not exaggerating, you take them inside, that guide will say, see the elephant, elephant, where? You can't see an elephant because it takes a certain amount of training to be able to spot an elephant in a jungle. If you go to Africa, they're standing there in the open field, it's very easy. In southern Indian jungles, elephant will be right there, you cannot see because his color and the way he is so merges with everything. Having said that, now we are pointing in the right direction. How do we get eyes to see something that we are not seeing right now? That's a very important question that I feel the scientific community should address. Right now, we are trying to look at everything from what is measurable. If something is measurable, obviously it's a quantity. Whether you weigh it or you scale it or you do whatever, whichever way, if you measure it, it's a quantity. Now we are talking about transforming ourselves from the way we are born to the way we want to be. In essence, when you say epigenetics, we are talking about, we are born one way, but we want to become something else altogether. Whatever that something else is. What is the range of modifications we can do and how quickly, is that the question? Well, the range of modification is limitless. Time depends on various aspects. One thing is the type of information you have in your system. How hardwired are you? How easy is it to unwire you? How identified are you with things that you know? See, this is very important. Whatever you see as truth in your life, it's very difficult to dissociate from that. To be able to see something that is as absolutely true and still be dissociated with that takes an enormous amount of work within yourself, that you keep a distance from things that you see as 100% true. What you see as true, you cannot throw it away. Am I correct? Hello? What I see as true, it's very easy to throw it away. What you see as true, hard to dissociate with that. Having said that, I don't want to use scientific words because I am nowhere there, all right? But can you change the complexion of the person that you are today, 100%, today? It's possible. The question is, are you willing to subject yourself to such an overhaul? Because are you willing to lose everything that you think you are and become something else? No, most human beings are not. They will come in installments. Their willingness… I've been working with people for over 40 years, their willingness comes in installments. They will come to me and say, Sadhguru, I want to go all the way, Sadhguru. I say, really, all the way? Okay, you stay here for a week, let's see what we can do. No, Sadhguru, on Wednesday morning, my uncle's daughter's birthday, I have to go. I said, okay, your uncle's daughter's birthday at least these 3 days, you do this, this and this. No, Sadhguru, I don't like this. So I tell them, give them a small piece of paper and say, write down all the things that you like, we'll do only that. They will think like this and write 3 or 4 things. So what, in this whole damn universe you like 4 things? With this you want to transform. Now, this is what I'm saying, willingness comes in installments, because what you know and experience as true, you can't dissociate. This can only happen if you have a mad sense of courage or you have enormous trust. Without these 2 things, you cannot determine the time. But can you do it? 100%, absolutely. Will you do it?
Christoph, you are one of the co-theorists, should I say, about integrated information theory, which is more popular now on consciousness. Can you put it in simple words that most of us can understand?
In English, they're saying.
And I have the remaining 90 minutes. So integrated information theory takes a different approach. It says, what is the only thing that you know, the only thing that's given to you, the only form of existence is consciousness. When I'm not conscious, when I'm deeply asleep or unconscious, I don't exist for myself. So it's really sort of, you start with what really exists, which is my consciousness, and then from there you seek to explain the world, and you seek to explain what is it about the world that gives that sort of, what is the substrate of this conscious experience. So it combines elements of what's called idealism with elements of physicalism. It says there's a substrate. In our case, it's the brain. It's not the heart, as most people thought. It's the brain. And so it says, well, what is it about the brain that gives rise to into consciousness? So it looks for particular very complex, irreducible aspects of reality. Ultimately, it says anything in the world, anything, not just this substrate, but any other substrate, including other animals, including possible trees or bacteria, or maybe even elementary matter, as long as it has some measure of complexity, as long as it is irreducible. So it starts with irreducibility, it has some aspect of mind. So it shares some aspect with what's called panpsychism, right? With the belief that consciousness is probably much more, there are many more things that are ensouled in the universe than just this, or maybe dogs and cats and great apes. And then it tries to make some prediction, because it's a scientific theory, so it tries to make prediction. Where does consciousness happen? In the human brain or in the brains of other creatures? Can you build a conscious meter? So Stephen Lorris this morning talked about a way to test for the presence of consciousness in patients that are unable to communicate, where you simply don't know whether they're conscious or not. So trying to build a conscious meter.
I talked about this a little bit before. Again, I do not know it's true. You're gonna have to fact check this if you want to know whether it's true or not. I did look up. I'm not really dying to know whether it's true or not, because it's not going to change my life either way. But maybe one day I will be curious enough. But this is just to throw this information out there. There was a YouTube channel that I watched that seemed scientific. Again, I don't know for sure. I should have delved a little bit deeper into it, but I just saw it, thought it was interesting. They just moved on with my life, and I kept that in the back of my head. Like I said, always listen to people, hear what they have to say. If it makes sense, then listen to them. Remember it if you want, but do not say it's absolute truth. I'm not saying this is absolute truth, by the way. But they said that there was someone that was in a coma, and they put him in an MRI machine. And what they did is they talked to the person to say, remember a memory in the pool, or, if they've been to a pool, for yes. So remember that memory, and anytime you want to say yes, remember that specific memory. And if you want to say no, remember a memory where you were in a car, but be a specific memory. And anytime you want to say no, remember that memory. Bring that memory up. So I believe it's an MRI machine, and then the memory itself is the idea. It's the way they answered, not whether it was a pull or something. I was just making that up. I don't remember what they said specifically, but they said remember memory number 1 if you want yes, and memory number 2 if you want to say no. So when they asked this person in the comatose, they asked them a question. It's a yes or no question, and they saw activity in a particular part of the brain. And I guess they kept asking him questions, and he saw these two parts light up because memories. I assume, my assumption is memories have generally a unique pattern in the brain. You light up certain patterns to say this is memory 1, and then light up another certain patterns for memory 2. So, I guess whenever they ask a yes or no questions, they can see those patterns in either the MRI scan or just a type of scanner that can scan brain functions, and I don't know how true that is. I wouldn't doubt. Obviously, you can scan for brain activity, but to say an unconscious person is still being to do that, it's kind of crazy.
And it also makes claim. It also infers consciousness where it is and where it's not present. So, most famously, integrated information theory said that machines, particular large language models like ChatGPT or GPT-4, 3.5 or 4.0, they can do almost everything that we can do. And in very few years, they will be able to do everything we can do, but just much better, faster, better, with perfect recall, perfect memory. But they can never be what we are, because they don't have, if you look at actually where the rubber hits the road, if you look at the physical substrate, it's very simple digital gates doing their thing, and consciousness is not a computation. The technical term, it's non-algorithmic, it's non-Turing computable. And so that would say, yes, the machines that we are surrounded with, and we live now in the age of intelligent machines, and they'll become more and more intelligent, with unknown consequences for our future, but they're not sentient and they're not conscious. So those are some of the implications of integrated information theory.
I do wonder though. So I mean, he says essentially that computers are like, like a search tree. You start off with the question at the very top, and then you branch off. It's a yes or no. And you have two options in that one question that branches, and you say it's a yes or a no. And then you have more complicated questions where there's many branches under that tree, and you start following. It's like, is it this? No, this? No, this? Yes. Go down. Okay, is it this? No, 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 yes, go down. No, 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 yes, go down. No, 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 yes, go down. Very logical. It asks these questions. Does it have? If you ask what has bunny ears, that has paws and fur and all? It'll start asking all these questions. So, does it have ears? Yes. So it looks at all animals that have ears. Fish, kind of out of the question, for the most part. And then, does it have paws? Well, alligators or reptiles, probably out of the questions. Does it have fur? Well, armadillos and animals that doesn't have furs are out of the question. So it starts eliminating large sections of information that it doesn't need, because that one question eliminates half of the possible answers. But the thing is, those that aren't humans are kind of like that too. I mean, we go like, okay, well, like I just did basically. It's like, well, armadillos don't have fur, so it can't be that one. It doesn't have paws, so it can't be reptilian. Is it warm or cold-blooded? Well, if it's not reptilian, it's definitely not cold-blooded. So it's warm-blooded, okay. He said it had ears, like very long, elongated ears. Is it bunnies? Bunnies. And a computer will be able to do that really quickly and still bring up the same answer. So I don't know. I would, obviously they're scientists. They probably ask this question and know exactly that. Yes, human brains and computer brains are nothing alike. I say there's very similarities, because again, the more information we gather as well, the more that we can dissect for the answer. So again, whether something is blue or red, well, we have to gather information. What is blue and what is red? Then we have a whole bunch of colors who say, well, it's definitely not all the blue, not all the black, not all the orange. Well, orange might be in there. Not all the yellow, not all the green. We have magenta, orange, brown maybe. And then we start filtering through all this, much like a computer would do too.
Thank you. So you met Sadhguru last night for the first time, and if I give you one question that you could ask about this consciousness, nothing else.
So, and Galileo, so science. And so I wanted to ask you a question about science and spirituality. So science is enormously successful. It gave us rise to all of this, and ChatGPT and nuclear weapons and mRNA COVID vaccines and all of that good stuff, and knowledge about the universe. But it started with Galileo saying, we have to make measurable what's not measurable. If it can't be measured, we don't study it as scientists. And B, with René Descartes, dividing everything into these dual domains of the physical and the mental, and by and large, scientists don't worry about the mental because it can't really be measured. And so
there's the problem, kind of. Again, science is not, it's meant to answer, I think a lot of people believe that science is meant to answer everything in the world. Science can only measure everything that it can measure. But the problem is we just don't know where that end is. We kind of have an idea, but a lot of people believe that the things that science cannot solve, it should be able to solve. So, like he talks about the mental. Scientists don't worry about the mental. Well, it is technically measurable, but the problem is what is the solution besides chemicals? And that's what the United States is. Or a lot of the Western world, honestly. Because obviously we don't know, we don't talk about the mental issue, so we just use chemicals, because that is something measurable. Oh, your endorphins is super high, or your cortisone, I don't know, I can't remember what the stress hormone is. That hormone is super high. Here's some drugs to reduce it. But that's just a little patch, a little band-aid for the wound, because you're not stopping that from reoccurring again, because science can't really do that. It can, but not really. It's all because you look at psychology, which is in a sense a science that figures out where the deeper problem is and tries to resolve it. But still, it's not an exact science though, and that's the problem. Science is exact, and there are non-exact sciences.
And given that this is the case, what do you expect that science can give? And can give all of us? We obviously suffer in the modern world from enormously mental health crisis. Like we're living through this time of deep depolarization and crisis. So what is it, given that these are these characters of science, what is it, if anything, that we can do to help people overcome their suffering?
Mm-hmm. Well, the question is not about consciousness.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
The question is about suffering. See, for any human being, if you know some suffering, you know only two kinds of suffering: physical suffering, mental suffering. You do not know any other kind of suffering. Am I correct? Hello?
Yes.
These are only two things. Physical aspect of who we are and the mental structure, both these things you built from within over a period of time. You were not born this way, you were born like this. Some input was there, rest you built over a period of time. By the food that we eat and the impressions that we gather and how we gather and how we eat, of course. With this we build different kinds of bodies and different kinds of minds. If you build something, to make it simple, let's say if you build a machine, the most important thing is it should take instructions from you. If you have a car that if you move the steering this way, it'll go this way, this is a dangerous car.
Yeah.
So, now your body and your mind, let me ask you a few simple questions, will you answer me please?
Yes.
If your body becomes pleasant, we call this health. You want it? Yes. No, that's only about 15, 16 people. The remaining, I'm asking you whether you whether you say yes, no or silence, I'll bless you, all right? Health, you want it?
Yes.
Because that big yes has not happened within you, you must know this. It's not you saying yes to me. Every cell in your body must hear you are saying yes to it. Yes? If it becomes very pleasant, we call it pleasure. Hey, come on. If your mind becomes pleasant, we call this peace. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it joy. If your emotions become pleasant, we call this love. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it compassion. If these very life energies become pleasant, we call this blissfulness. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it ecstasy. If your surroundings become pleasant, we call this success. Only to create pleasantness in our surroundings, we need the cooperation of all these people and many other forces. But to create pleasantness in your body, in your mind, in your emotion and in your energy is 100% your business. So, your suffering is just that you have not taken charge of this machine. You have not taken charge of your faculties.
That is so amazing, people understand. I think the thing is people kind of have this understanding that you are in control of your stuff. Some people, I don't know if most do, and they just it's very difficult for them to see that. It's because everything is externalized, and everything's based on external things, and not realizing that a lot of it is internal. Meaning that when someone makes you mad, when you get mad, it's always because of something external. But the problem is no one ever thinks about it. Two people stand in the same area, me and this other person, and this person said something. I get mad, this person not affected. They never ask, why is that? He's not talking to me specifically, he merely made a statement that I disagreed with. But yet I am mad, and why is this person not mad? Maybe he still disagrees with that person, but he doesn't take it personal. He understands that he has no control over that person, whatever he says or his beliefs. But he has absolute control over his emotions, how he feels about what that person says. He understands that person may be wrong, maybe it's misinformed, maybe he is right and he doesn't like the truth, but he doesn't let it affect him because it's the truth. But a lot of people externalizes everything. Everything external affects them internally. That's the biggest issue that I think a lot of people have, and I think it's pretty obvious for a lot of people, especially if you really start thinking about things. I have, whenever they said life is suffering back in college, changed perspective in my entire life. That life is suffering, so why should I suffer? That's what I said.
I'm asking, if your thought and emotion right now happen the way you want, would you create blissfulness or misery? Please tell me. What's your choice? For yourself. What you want for your neighbor may be debatable, but for yourself, highest level of pleasantness, isn't it? Can I tell you a little joke? Is it okay? Because these things get so serious, we start suffering. Conferences can be suffered, you know that. I have suffered many. On a certain day, a lady went to sleep. In her sleep, she had a dream. In her dream, she saw a hunk of a man standing there and staring at her. Then he started coming closer, closer, closer and closer, that she could even feel his breath. And she trembled, not in fear. And then she asked, "What will you do to me?" He said, "Well, lady, it's your dream. You can do whatever the hell you want." So right now, it's not even about your life is not happening the way you want, even your dream is not happening the way you want. If your dream was happening the way you want, would you suffer? So, suffering is simply because you have misunderstood your psychological reality as existential. Your psychological drama has become bigger than the cosmic drama that's happening. So once you have such a misconception, such a lack of context in the universe, then you must suffer. Hello? When you misunderstand that you're bigger than the cosmos, you should suffer some, isn't it? That's all it is about. This may sound unempathetic because people are always in this mode, I scratch your back, you scratch my back, both of us are right. So this is the deal between the suffering. But does anybody consciously wants to suffer? No, but too many people are committed to suffering. Too many people are committed to suffering, either they're encouraged by their religious beliefs or they believe that's the only way you will mature, that is the only way you will know. It's a sad conclusion you have made. You tell me or any of the scientists who are here can tell me, this body and this brain works best when it's peaceful and joyful. This is my experience, sir. Is it correct, sir? I don't know who are the brain scientists. Is it correct? Your body and your brain works at its best when it's in a pleasant state of experience. How do you think by suffering you will realize something? Somebody is psyching you to believe that because your suffering is their business.
Professor Carr.
Okay, actually, I'm gonna pause it right here. Again, I wanted to. That's an interesting one you never said before about the fact that if you believe your suffering's bigger than the cosmos, then clearly you're gonna suffer a little bit. I guess the way I understood that is the fact that if you think you're the biggest deal in the cosmos, that obviously you're gonna suffer because you're bigger than the cosmos. But if you're an insignificant thing in the cosmos, it sounds terrible, maybe that's not the right wordage for it, but if you're this little tiny thing in a grander scheme, that your suffering being this tiny in the cosmos, your suffering is this tiny as well. But if you're bigger than the cosmos, then your suffering is going to be bigger than the cosmos. Because you think yourself as too important to suffer. That you shouldn't be suffering because you're that important, that much more than the cosmos. That you shouldn't suffer, that you do suffer. That's a new one that I don't believe I've heard him said before. But anyways, this is at least the end of part 1. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up the sound down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.